Good morning to all my fellow friends and Dr. Sulaiman. Today our group will present the research paradigm for accounting. Before we start the presentation, I would like to introduce my group members, and we only have 4 members in a group. My name is Devasi Daimin, and my other group members are Effie, Faziha, and Sharmila. Okay, the research paradigm for accounting, reviewed by Kamisa Ismail and Surya Zainuddin, determine the methodological apply in accounting and management research. The two frameworks are the research framework by Birrell and Morgan, 1979, and Chua, 1986, to determine the significant perspective applied in the study. Besides, the paper also explores the nature of accounting research and then evaluate if the focus on the philosophy are justified or not. The theory of Chua, 1986, discuss Birrell and Morgan theory with several criticism on using the term mutually exclusive. Thus, Chua, 1986, has distinguished the approach of Morgan and Birrell, 1979, with her theory, based on the mainstream perspective, interpretive perspective, and critical perspective.
Hi, my name is Faziha. I will present about mainstream. Mainstream is developed by a similar assumption with natural science, and it is the most common method that has been used among the researchers. The basis for social research for this is mostly seen as increasingly unsatisfactory. According to Wisdom 1987, mainstream have an important role to play, such as adopting policy of measuring, observing, experimenting, and collecting data, but these are not the characteristic of natural science, and it is only producing a scientific interpretation. In gathering a broader information, it focuses more on using experimental and quantitative methods, and sometimes qualitative methods, to measure the variables. Besides that, mainstream also adopting a positivism. And accounting research believes that it must be separate observation and theoretical constructs that has been done in natural science. However, it neglected the more social conflict that occurs within the organizational life. For example, in organization, the efficiency and the profit are most to be seen, while social and moral responsibility are forgotten, except when recognizing this responsibility becomes a profit maximizing strategy, such as corporate social responsibility, CSR.
Interpretive paradigms is research that's supported by observation, interpretation, and analysis. The observation is needed to collect the information about the event. The interpretation is to define the information by making inference from the information and other abstract patterns. Interpretive paradigm focus on the need to put analysis in the context. For example, when the researcher believes one event, he or she needs to observe the surrounding to collect the information. Next, the researcher defines the information by making judgment between all the information. Lastly, the researcher also needs to analyze the information. So basically, interpretive paradigm is about qualitative and quantitative research, which is referred to how they collect the data information and how they will analyze them. Qualitative research relies mostly on numeric data such as interview and observation, in contrast to qualitative research which employ numeric data such as score and metrics. Next, interpretive paradigm contain 4 characteristics, which are 1. Purpose of research, 2nd. Ontology, 3rd. Epistemology, and 4th. Methodology. So the first characteristic is the purpose of research, which is understanding and interpreting students' and teacher perspective on the factor that could impact successfully the learning in the manner they complement each other. Next, the second characteristic is ontology. Ontology is reality, and this can be explored and constructed through human interaction and meaningful action. For example, reality is something that has physical form of fact and things that exist. Then, the third characteristic is epistemology. Epistemology is an event that understood through the mental process of interpretation that is influenced by interaction with social context. For example, the researcher needs to more understand the interpretation from the interaction with society. Last but not the least, methodology. Methodology is basically the way researchers get their answer. This is the process of data collect by text message, interview, and reflective session.
Morning. Today I'm going to talk about critical perspective. Okay, what is critical perspective? Critical as a particular meaning of challenging research, wisdom, or orthodoxy in some way. For example, whereas the mainstream focus is on shared goals in an organization, the critical view regards organizations as a political instrument for achieving contested goals, and it should be noted that mainstream and critical are not sealed boxes of knowledge. What is considered critical, radical, and even subversive thinking at one point of time can, in the future, become part of the mainstream. An example is anti-apartheid movement in South Africa led by Nelson Mandela. His views were at one time considered eventually so critical that those the authority considered that they warranted his imprisonment. But these views eventually become the mainstream thinking of to the extent that Mandela became the president. So another example is ideas around corporate social responsibility and the view that organizations have responsibility aside from the maximization of profit. This was initially considered as a critical view, but has largely been adopted by the mainstream. So critical perspective, some we can be tell that like encourage us to think about fairness and equity and not just profit. Okay, it just highlights the contested aspects of the organizational life and challenges common sense in organizational behavior. Moreover, critical theorists are often marginalized to a greater extent than others, often do not provide solutions to precipite the problems inconsistent with normal training of accountants to provide the solutions if problems are evident. That it is critical of accountants. That all. Thank you.
In conclusions, the theory of Chua 1986 is the major perspective applied in the research paradigm. According to Herons 2008, Chua 1986 dismissed the concept of the mutually exclusive paradigm of Birrell and Morgan 1979 as illogical, relativistic, and superficial. Besides, the 2-by-2 metric assumed in Birrell and Morgan 1979 research also had limitations. Chua 1986 then contributed to the literature by distinguishing the three alternative approaches known as mainstream perspective, interpretive perspective, and critical perspective. However, there were only two perspectives recommended by Lee 1991 and Kakure Knutila 2008. The positivist and interpretive approach in organizational research, in which they were mutually supportive rather than mutually exclusive.